For 8 long years, Brad Pitt stayed silent. No clapbacks, no interviews, no emotional confessions, not a single public defense. While the media dragged his name through non-stop debates, Brad vanished into the background, letting the world run wild with its own assumptions. Then, in 2025, after years of court battles, broken family ties, and a jaw-dropping $500 million fight over Chateau Miraval, he finally spoke up. And what came out wasn't rage or revenge. It was the low, steady truth of a man who had been carrying the weight of his worst chapter in complete silence, right at the start of a storm he never saw coming. And please hit the subscribe button. It costs you nothing, but it means a lot to me. Back in 2003, when Brad Pitt met Angelina Jolie on the set of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, nobody could have predicted the chaos ahead. At that time, Brad was still married to Jennifer Aniston, and Angelina had recently split from Billy Bob Thornton. But the chemistry on set was loud without a word being said. Cameras caught every look, tabloids twisted every interview, and suddenly, Hollywood had a brand new obsession they couldn't let go of. By 2005, once Brad and Jennifer finalized their divorce, the public had already picked sides. Then came the photos, Brad, Angelina, and her son Maddox in Kenya, and that single moment blew the story wide open. The narrative took off like wildfire, way bigger than any press team could control. Over the next decade, Brad and Angelina became the most watched family on the planet, whether they liked it or not. Their family grew fast. Maddox from Cambodia, Zahara from Ethiopia, Pax from Vietnam, followed by Shiloh in 2006, and twins Knox and Vivian in 2008. To the outside world, they were branded Hollywood's global family, a picture of unity, culture, and purpose. But behind closed doors, life wasn't as polished. Juggling non-stop fame, constant travel, and the pressure of raising 6 kids under a microscope slowly wore things down. The cracks didn't show overnight. They crept in quietly, long before the public noticed. In 2008, they bought Chateau Miraval for $28 million, a peaceful French estate that doubled as a family hideout, and the launchpad for their wildly successful Miraval wine brand. For 6 years, it looked like their safe zone. The kids grew up there. The vineyard flourished. And in 2014, they held a private wedding on the property with only close friends and their children present. For a brief moment, it felt solid, like they'd finally found balance in the chaos. But that calm didn't last. Just 2 years later, the foundation cracked completely. In September 2016, Angelina filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, and everything changed overnight. What once looked like an unbreakable family turned into one of Hollywood's most painful and public separations. And looming over it all was the plane incident, an event that insiders say marked the point of no return. Days later, the marriage was over, the family fractured, and the silence around Brad Pitt only grew heavier as the storm fully broke. In September 2016, during a private flight from France to the United States, an incident unfolded that flipped Brad Pitt's public image upside down and set off a global media explosion. What should have been a routine trip instantly turned into front-page chaos. According to documents later filed by Angelina Jolie's legal team, Brad had been drinking on the plane, and a heated verbal argument spiraled fast. Angelina alleged that the situation crossed a serious line, describing behavior she viewed as aggressive, and the story spread worldwide in minutes. Their eldest son, Maddox, who was 15 at the time, reportedly stepped in as tensions rose. What happened next has been argued over ever since. Angelina claimed Brad grabbed Maddox by the neck during the confrontation. People close to Brad forcefully denied that specific claim, pushing back hard on that detail. Still, the allegation alone was enough to trigger serious consequences. because the incident happened in international airspace, pulling federal authorities into the situation immediately. The FBI launched an investigation without delay. At the same time, the Los Angeles Department of Child and Family Services opened its own inquiry to assess the children's safety. For weeks, Brad's life was flipped into chaos. Interviews, evaluations, constant scrutiny, and supervised visits became his new reality. Eventually, both agencies concluded there wasn't enough evidence to file criminal charges, but the headlines didn't slow down for a second. Angelina didn't pursue the case further, yet by then, the damage was already locked in. Brad's reputation had taken a brutal hit in the public eye, and whatever trust remained inside the family was badly shaken. Soon after, a temporary court order granted Angelina primary custody of all 6 children. Brad was allowed visitation, but only under strict supervision, a move meant to protect the kids, but one that reshaped the family forever. That ruling kicked off an 8-year custody battle that drained everyone involved. What used to be a tight-knit household slowly fractured into separate worlds. With speculation growing louder and more ruthless by the day, every court update fueled more headlines, and the pressure never let up. Even after being cleared of criminal wrongdoing, Brad chose silence. Years later, he admitted that 2016 became a personal turning point. He acknowledged the need for sobriety and recognized that the flight marked a deep emotional shift, not just a legal one. The family that once stood shoulder to shoulder on red carpets now lived with distance, tension, and unresolved pain hanging in the air. As the custody battle dragged on, the emotional gaps widened. The hardest blows didn't come from courtrooms or cameras. They came from Brad's growing distance from his children. Maddox, the eldest, was the first to step away. By 2021, he gave testimony in court described as unfavorable to Brad. Reports later suggested that Maddox privately expressed no longer seeing Brad as his father, and leaked documents indicated he had explored changing his name to Maddox Jolie, a powerful, symbolic move that showed just how deep the fracture had become. Pax, now an adult, reacted even more strongly, and his response sent shockwaves through the internet. In 2020, he shared a message on a private Instagram account where he harshly criticized Brad, calling him an awful person and claiming the kids felt fear when he entered a room. Even though the post was deleted quickly, screenshots spread fast, and the message took on a life of its own. It painted a raw picture of emotional pain that many believed had been building for years behind closed doors. By 2023 and 2024, Pax was involved in 2 traffic-related incidents that reports said raised concerns about his emotional well-being. Observers noted he was being closely monitored at home, and people around the family quietly acknowledged the long-term stress tied to years of public and private conflict. The pressure didn't play out on red carpets. It showed up in moments far from the spotlight, where the weight of family tension hit hardest. Then there was Shiloh, once seen by fans as the living symbol of Brad and Angelina's love story. In May 2024, she legally filed to remove Pitt from her name and go by Shiloh Jolie. The court approved the request in August, and her legal representative stated the decision followed a series of personal events. International media quickly framed it as the clearest signal yet of where she stood, and the headlines exploded overnight. By that same year, Vivian was credited professionally as Vivian Jolie, while working alongside her mother on the Broadway production The Outsiders. Knox, still a minor, remained protected from public attention, but even so, he hadn't been seen publicly with Brad in years. The pattern was impossible to ignore, and the silence around it only made the situation feel heavier. Through all of this, Brad stayed quiet, not once publicly responding to the claims or criticisms coming from his children. According to sources close to his legal team, he repeatedly asked for family therapy sessions. Some sessions did happen under professional supervision, but none lasted long. The emotional gap had grown too wide, and what was once a tightly bonded family slowly became separate lives moving in different directions, each holding their own version of the truth. While the emotional fallout fractured the family, the financial fight turned their split into one of Hollywood's messiest legal wars. The battle over Chateau Miraval, once a calm French estate and the site of their 2014 wedding, became ground zero for years of lawsuits and power plays. What used to represent peace and partnership turned into nonstop courtroom drama. After the 2016 divorce filing, Brad held 60% ownership of Miraval through his company, Mondo Bongo, while Angelina held 40%. He later transferred 10% to her so they could hold equal shares. For a short time, the vineyard still stood for unity. But once the marriage collapsed, Miraval became a legal minefield. In 2021, Angelina sold her entire stake to Tenute del Mondo, a company linked to businessman Yuri Scheffler, without notifying Brad. He had long opposed doing business with that group, and in a lawsuit filed in early 2022, Brad claimed they had a verbal agreement requiring written consent before either party could sell. That move poured gasoline on an already raging fire, turning a personal breakup into a global legal showdown. Brad's legal team didn't hold back. They described Angelina's sale of her Miraval stake as a deliberately hostile move, accusing her of trying to damage the winery's operations and undercut Brad's ability to run the business properly. From their view, it wasn't just business, it was personal. Angelina fired back fast, arguing that Brad had refused to buy her out unless she signed a sweeping NDA. According to her filings, that agreement was meant to silence her about the events leading up to the divorce, and she wasn't willing to do that. By late 2023, the fight leveled up even more. Newly filed communications showed Angelina's lawyers arguing that Brad himself caused the massive document demands because he was suing her for $35 million, claiming her actions hurt Miraval's business. Brad's side pushed back hard, insisting Angelina was withholding key documents under attorney-client privilege. They accused her of stretching that privilege to bury evidence that could shift the case in his favor. Angelina responded with her own filings, stating that after the split, she left Brad full control and residency of the family homes in Los Angeles and at Miraval. According to her team, she hoped that move would cool tensions during an already traumatic time. Instead, she claimed it opened the door to years of non-stop legal pressure. By 2024, the winery dispute had exploded into a complex international case involving Luxembourg corporate law, accusations of malice, and battles over more than 22 heavily contested documents. As the December 17th hearing approached, both sides accused each other of acting in bad faith. What had once been a family sanctuary now stood as a symbol of everything that went wrong. Nearly $500 million in property was locked inside a legal standoff neither side seemed ready to end, and the bitterness only kept growing. Then, after 8 years of silence, everything changed. In May 2025, Brad Pitt finally did what he had avoided for nearly a decade. He spoke. On May 28th, he appeared on the cover of GQ, giving his first in-depth interview since the divorce filing back in 2016. Until then, the public had only seen silent paparazzi shots and carefully crafted statements from lawyers. This time it was different. In the interview, Brad addressed the end of his marriage, the legal war, and the distance between him and his children with a calm, almost drained tone. He confirmed the divorce was officially finalized in December 2024, calling it simply something that needed to be done. When asked why he stayed quiet for so long, he answered bluntly, saying, "I didn't see the point of speaking up when everything was chaos. Silence was the only way to avoid making things worse." For the first time, he publicly acknowledged the growing distance from his children. He didn't name anyone, didn't point fingers, and didn't defend himself against their painful words. Instead, he said quietly, "I'm always here, if they need their father." It didn't sound like a plea or an apology, more like acceptance of a reality he couldn't control. He added something that lingered long after the interview ended. No one enters a marriage expecting their family to fall apart this way. He avoided revisiting the plane incident, avoided accusations, and avoided blame altogether. In the end, he summed it up with a line that felt heavy and final. What happened, happened. Brad also revealed that he's been completely sober since 2016, and the way he described his life now felt stripped down and heavy. Meditation, reading, silence, work, sculpting, no chaos, no spotlight chasing. He spoke like someone who stepped back from the noise, not broken, not beaten, but emotionally worn out from years of pressure. A source close to Angelina later said she felt relieved that Brad had finally acknowledged the divorce was truly over and made it clear she had zero interest in responding publicly. The reaction online split fast. Some people respected his restraint and the calm way he spoke. Others felt he still sidestepped accountability. But for Brad, the interview didn't feel like a redemption tour. It felt like closure. A final attempt to take back his voice after years of letting the story move without him. Not a comeback. More like turning the page after the storm finally passed. After years of public scrutiny, courtroom clashes, and non-stop speculation, Brad Pitt's life now looks nothing like it did when his family was still together. Professionally, he hasn't lost power. His production company, Plan B, remains one of Hollywood's strongest creative forces, backing major Oscar-winning films like 12 Years a Slave, Moonlight, The Big Short, and Women Talking. Behind the scenes, his influence never disappeared, it just got quieter. By late 2025, Brad is expected to return to the screen in a high-profile Formula One film produced by Apple Studios. It will be his first major leading role in years, created in collaboration with Lewis Hamilton. Industry insiders are calling it his boldest reinvention yet, a calculated move to redefine himself without leaning on old formulas. But outside studio gates, his world is almost silent now. Brad spends most of his time at his Santa Barbara estate, sculpting gardens, reading, and keeping a low profile. Fame no longer runs the show. Privacy does. Solitude does. And in 2025, reports surfaced that Brad is engaged to Swiss jewelry designer Inés de Ramón. The two were first spotted together in 2022, and by early 2025, multiple sources confirmed he had proposed, with a private European ceremony planned later in the year. Brad hasn't spoken publicly about the engagement, but people close to him say this is the first time since the divorce that he's let someone back into his emotional space. Meanwhile, Angelina Jolie continues her work across the globe as a filmmaker, producer, and humanitarian. Her daughter Vivienne is now working alongside her on the Broadway production The Outsiders, marking a new creative chapter for the mother-daughter duo. Angelina has stated that neither she nor the children have returned to Miraval since the divorce, and remains fully focused on stability and well-being. Maddox now lives in South Korea. Pax stays far from the spotlight. Shiloh and Vivian no longer use the Pitt surname. These details sit quietly beneath the headlines, unresolved, unchanged. After 8 years of silence, Brad finally spoke, but the distance between him and the children he once carried across red carpets remains the one part of the story he can't rewrite. 8 years of silence are finally over, but the damage left behind won't disappear overnight. Brad Pitt has spoken. The court fights are winding down, the paperwork is almost done, yet the deepest distance, the one inside his family, still hangs in the air unanswered. Time is the only thing left that can tell if bonds this broken can ever be rebuilt, or if some lines stay crossed forever. What do you think? Can a family come back from something this deep? If this story hit you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Vintage Pulse channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more raw, real stories like this one. Thanks for watching.